Rough Rhymes of Reverence, written and read by Jimmie Nelson. Introduction. The rough, the tough, the uncouth, we see them passing by. They fight, they curse, they've been known to cry. Yes, they have their moments of love and reverence, even as you and I. Men who walk with God. While searching for other men than the clergy who may walk with God, I drove off the city pavement and under the country sod. And I came to this plowman with a team of horses, sleek and fat, and saw him, in deference to the heavenly tones of the meadowlark, stop and take off his hat. I saw moisture in his eyes as he spoke of the sweet perfume of new-mown hay and fresh-turned sod, and I thought, surely, this is a man who walks with God. And I continued o'er the prairie, my little Jeep and I, enjoying the good fresh air and the clear blue sky. I came to this cowboy who was wrestling with a calf. He sure had his hands full. We both began to laugh. Then I heard him praise his horse for having saved him from the horns of the mother cow that was on the prod. And I knew that this was another man who walks with God. I looked towards the city as it was getting late, and I heard a coyote singing a love song to his mate. And the pungent smell of the sagebrush was just balm to my tired soul. And a feeling came o'er me that I never would grow old. And thus, through the magic of the sod, I too, for a while, was a man who walks with God. The portrait of an old-time trail boss. One picture is worth 10,000 words, they say. I would like to study this portrait of an old-time trail boss with you, if I may. Now, if we read the lines on the furrows on that old leathery face, they will tell us why he's called the salt of the earth and a credit to his race. He doesn't lie, he doesn't steal, he doesn't welch a debt or fail a friend in need. And that in itself sets him aside as a very special breed. Those lines fanning out from the corner of his eyes and beyond, each one stands for a handshake that closed a deal where his word was as good as his bond. That old neckerchief always in place. Riding drag, he'd choke on dust if he didn't have it to cover his face. Those determined lines about his sensitive mouth represent the savings of thousands of lives of cattle over many years of drought. Swimming swollen rivers, turning mad stampedes, facing the sun and the hail, and trying to find the wherewithal to bail his cowhands out of jail. He's slim of waist, lean of flank, but his only wealth is health. He has no money in the bank. That he wears a Stetson cowboy hat, no one will ever doubt it, because it's generally understood that he just couldn't possibly live without it. He wears a Levi jacket and a Pendleton shirt, often very dusty but usually free of dirt. And those heavy chaps he doesn't have his appearance to enhance. Why, if he didn't have all that leather, he'd have cactus in his pants. No, for fancy duds, he doesn't give a hoot. But I'll just bet you 10 to 1 that he wears a Justin handmade boot, and his saddle the best, made for him by Bolin. It takes a lot of horse and saddle to keep those dogies rolling. And when he's riding in a storm, he sings in tones that are deep and low. It helps to keep him warm. Cursing, swearing, why, with him that's an art. But for dirty, nasty, filthy words, he'll have no part. And if anyone should ever call him a dirty old man, it would damn near break his heart. Just before he started to take someone apart, and if they tried to stop him, they wouldn't get in a lick. For he has disassembled many a would-be tough guy until he found out what made him tick. He has a high respect for women folk, and he can't understand why any of them would ever step down to the level of man. He loves horses, dogs, and children, and has all the while. Just mention them, and you'll see that cowboy smile. He rides in the sun all day, sleeps under the stars at night, so his mind is clean and wholesome, and his spirit's light. And when he heads for the last roundup beyond the Milky Way, there'll be a big howdy-do and barbecue that will last forever and a day. And he'll enjoy it all through the course. And I know he'll thrill to that welcome whinny of his horse. Frontier duty, or the way it was. Working with all extenuating circumstances from the scene of the crime back through the ages to the first amoeba in the ooze, and never has there been a crime committed on this earth for which a psychiatrist and a lawyer cannot find a rational excuse. Now, rationalizing with predestination may salve the conscience and let the lawyers have their say. But in this practical world of ours, things just don't always work out that way. Now, where I came from way back when, we didn't have any psychiatrists or lawyers. We just had men. They caught a horse thief. They didn't fool around. They found a tree and they hanged him, and they buried him in the ground. And one of the cowboys, with an okay from the trail boss, got off of his horse and he put up a wooden cross. And standing near the head, he took off his hat and he said, "Mister, your sins were many, your virtues just a few. But God sent his Son to wipe out the brands on sinners, sinners like me and you." And when they turned to go, the trail boss had something in his eye. It was hard, mighty hard to see a young man die and think that there but for the grace of God go I. Even old Tuffy did a little blinky. There wasn't much talk that day, but there was an awful lot of thinking. They were sorely troubled, not so much by that wailing Wyoming wind, as but by the thought if they caught that other horse thief, they'd have to go through this act again. Frontier duty is no fun, no sin. They saw their duty, and they did it well. But every one of them chewed on a chunk of hell. My friend the snake. While I was in the mountains and out on a hike, I stepped right near a rattlesnake that was coiled and ready to strike. Why he didn't bite me, I cannot say, but he rattled his rattles, uncoiled, and peacefully crawled away. Then I picked up a stick and took his life, an act with which I cannot abide. And I felt so ashamed, I sat by the trail and cried. My friend said, "Oh, you did what was right. He could have killed you in a minute." But he missed the point. The point is, he could have, but he didn't. That was when I was just a half-grown boy. But ever since, it's been my prayer that someday man will understand dumb critters and treat 'em fair and square. My friend the owl. As the years went by, a wise old owl roosted in our tree. And as I'd work around, he'd often call to me, saying, "Look up, look up, look up, man. There's so many beautiful things to see. Variety is the spice of life. That's what keeps us sane. No two moments are alike, and no two sunsets are the same." Oh, if I more often I had stopped to hear what that old bird had to say, I would have been a better and a wiser man today. Friends. True story. An old man and an old dog, both very old and gray, slept in haystacks at night and walked the roads by day. They stayed away from the highways and the city streets. Cement wasn't meant for old and tired feet. They were welcome wherever they went, but they were always traveling on. One could often see them on the road at dawn. The man loved that dog, and the dog loved that man, and he showed his devotion as only dumb critters can. A farmer went out to feed his sheep, and he found the old man in his long and final sleep. And the dog wouldn't leave. He just lay there with his head across the old man's sleeve. So they buried the man under a willow tree down by the brook. And in his hand they placed his Bible, his one and only book. As the dog refused to eat, he too soon was buried near the old man's feet. You know, the farmers still tell the children about the friendship of that pair and how their spirits are still together in that somewhere way out there, and where all of the farmers are friendly and there are haystacks everywhere. A horse from heaven. Nataf, our white Arabian Stallion, blessed this earth with dignity, poise, and grace. Then one day he was called back home to a higher place. Now we see him in the fleecy clouds that go drifting by. His mane is flowing, his neck and tail are arched, and his feet are flashing high. Breathtaking beauty just brings moisture to the eye. And when the storm clouds gather in the far off yonder, he's parading for the angels, and we hear their applause in thunder. Now is it any wonder that we reminisce and smile and thank God for having shared him with us mortals for a while? Nataf. Something very special came to our ranch one day. We found him in the barn, stretched out on some hay. And when first we saw him, both our hearts he won. And we said, he's beautiful. Let's keep him and call him Nataf. So we showered him with goodies just to make him grow. And we praised him and we loved him. It's the only way we know. And as for his training, easy did it. Always patient, never rough. It may not have been the best way, but for us, it worked well enough. For 6 wonderful years, he was our joy and pride. Then one day, he was called to greener pastures over the great divide. Oh, that horse was almost human, and his eyes, large, dark, limpid pools of understanding, were something special to behold. One could sense a fleeting glimpse of infinite perfection through those windows to his soul. Now when we head for the last roundup, be it night or be it day, he'll be there with our other loves to greet us, far beyond the Milky Way. A miracle in the night. A baby horse was born on our ranch last night. The stars were blanketed by a mist, and there was a soft and magic light. We had no misgivings. We felt that everything was right as we waited for the miracle in the night. The baby nickered to his mother at the taking of first air, and the mother whinnied back. It was an answer to a prayer. Then the wonder of it all seemed to grow and grow, and what they said, only they need know. The Lord moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform, and there are miracles night and day on every ranch and farm. And may he hold us in his hands and keep us all from harm. A workman's prayer. May I have work, hard work. Dear Lord, this is my prayer. Where there's work, good honest work, dear Lord, let me be there. And may I have tools, sharp, keen tools, my hands to extend. And when I start a project, may I work it to the end. And when I work my hands, may I also work my mind, so that a craftsman I may be. And then my hands, my mind, and heart to create some artistry. And when I meet thee, Master of all good workmen, may I know I did my best. And if it pleases thee, dear Lord, mix some work with eternal rest. A cowboy's Thanksgiving prayer. Dear God, I don't often pray, but on this special day, I thank thee for my plate of beans and for my new blue jeans and for my friend and pal, you know, the big bay horse in the South Corral. And my thanks would be but half if I forgot that pretty white-faced calf and that hen that lays the big brown eggs. Thanks, God. Amen. A cowboy gets religion. This cowboy was dressed in his very best, from his Stetson hat right down to his feet. He was tall and dark and handsome, with a bad case of conceit. He said, I don't believe in any God that gives out favors free. Folks work for all they get, and one of them is me. And he started sleeping on the prairie under those wide open skies, and those big bright stars just cut him down to size. While gazing at the Milky Way, he felt extremely small and said to himself, "Well, cowboy, you're not such a hot shot after all." But he felt happy, safe, and free, and said to his pal, "You know, that big trail boss way out yonder is sure good to you and me." Missy No-No. A big little dog who would be mighty hard to get. I speak of Missy No-No, our Australian silky pet that weighed in at 9 pounds even when she was sopping wet. She acted as foreman to our ranch, and she ran it straight. It's all right to be a little early, but you'd better not be late. She took charge of everything, morning, noon, and night, and we often marveled at how her insights could always be so right. She told us when to work, she told us when to rest, she knew who was who and what was what, and for us she chose the best. The latter part of her 17 years, she couldn't hear. Then her eyes began to fail, but she could see us with her nose, and she smiled with her tail. Yes, the mortal part of our big little dog has been put beneath the clay, but the aura of her concerns and understandings have not gone away. So you see, the big part of our big little dog is here with us to stay. Just before she was put to sleep, she came and licked my hand, which said to me, "I love you, and I understand." Some say there's no dogs in heaven. Oh, who knows? That may be. But if Missy No-No didn't make the grade, there's sure no chance for me. Our old house. Our old house wasn't built in a hurry. Our old house wasn't built in a day. Our old house was built by craftsmen. Our old house was built to stay. Our old house has a massive chimney made of cement, sand, and stone, and a large fireplace that has made many feel at home. Our old house has had its share of anguish, sorrow, tears, but it's also been filled with joy and laughter for nigh unto 50 years. There are many an old house like our old house. Oh yes, quite a few. But our old house is a house that we hate to leave and just love to come back to. Old houses are eulogized in poetry. Many a song's been sung. But our old house is not an old house. It's a half a century young. My friends, the crows. 2 black crows come to our ranch most every day. They sit on the fence and they say, "Hello," as we go on our way. They're a congenial couple, no bickering, no strife, just a perfect example of happy married life. There's this one crow that used to come, and his coming hurt me so. You see, his mate was drowned in our watering trough many years ago. I guess he didn't see me when I buried her in the ground, because year after year, time after time, he came to see if she was still around. You say I shouldn't worry and my sorrow show, because he's just nothing but a faithful, lonesome old black crow. Well, when I found him drowned the other day, it hurt. It hurt like an open sore. But I should not be sad. I guess I should be glad, because he's now with his mate, and he's not lonesome anymore. My critter friends. I have many critter friends. Some walk, some crawl, some fly. They all have their good and their bad points, even as you and I. But never have I found one telling a bald-faced lie. And they're not out to make a stake. All they ask of us humans is that we give them an honest break. My friend the ground squirrel. I have a friend, a ground squirrel, who lives in a hole under a bale of hay. He came out to visit me today, and as I was sitting just a short ways away, I knew if I didn't move, he'd stay. Then he sat up real straight with that dignified, imposing pose. I liked the way he twitched his mustache and wrinkled up his nose. He was an enticing little dear. Given a flowing cape and a hat with a plume, he'd have made a perfect cavalier. But with his winsome ways and shiny coat, he was charming, to say the least. He found some grain that I'd put down and had for himself a feast. Stayed out long enough to take a second look around, and he didn't like everything he saw and went back into the ground. But you know, I think he liked me, and that with us he will abide. Holy cow! I hope the cats don't get him. Bless his little hide. A little white lie and $1 million smile. Old Jack was sitting in his cabin, and on the door there came a knock. He called, "Take her down, come on in, you know it's never locked." And there, standing in the doorway, stood a man he knew he'd seen before, but where and how long ago he wasn't really sure. He said, now, don't tell me. With me, this is a game. Why, everybody in these parts know that I never forget a name. Yes, sir. Joe thought, if he wants to call me Pete, Pete's fine. But I see the old man's name forgetter is still working overtime. Coffee's ready in a while. Sit over there in the light so I can see again your $1 million smile. Your dad still living? Oh, I'm glad. One of the best friends that I ever had. And your mother, just as dear as she could be. Now, when you see her, you give her a big bar hug for me. Yes, sir? Pete, it's amazing. My memory just cannot be beat. Here, after 20 years, and I still know your name is Pete. And someone called, "Hey, Joe, it's time to go." He says, "You know why he called me Joe? I'm such a bragger that they nicknamed me Joe Blow. Why, they've called me that ever since I joined the fleet. It's only my dearest and best friends that know that my real name is Pete." Now, protect the feelings of an old friend is very well worthwhile when all it takes is a little white lie and $1,000,000 smile. Dogs somehow seem to know. An old man sat on a park bench, as senior citizens often do, and he was wearing his best and only suit that was many years from new. He'd been sitting there all afternoon, and it seemed a long, long while. There'd been many a passerby, but none gave him a friendly smile. And then this big dog came by and licked his hand, trotted on his way. And he thought, "Glory, I found a friend. I'm a rich man today." That evening, he spoke of his newfound friend and how he'd chased away the gloom. And with a gladdened heart and a smile on his face, he went to his lonely room. Some say it's instinct. Others say it's in the breed. But anyhow, dogs seem to know just what we humans need. Indian Frank, my friend. I took Frank out to dine. Asked him if he'd like some wine. And he said, "Ugh, whiskey fine." Well, he's young and strong, and I'm old and frail, so he had his red eye, and I had ginger ale. He got drunk and was put in jail, but I was there to pay his bail, which was fine, because you see, Indian Frank is a friend of mine. Why? Because he's the kind that would never leave me in a bind. And he wouldn't ask where, why, how, or when, but stay right with me to the end. Indian Frank's my kind of friend. Hipshot, my friend. Why, you're digging a grave. You have flowers. Why, there's a tear in your eye. Why, man, why carry on like that? He was just a cat. Neighbor, you should not say that. Hipshot was my friend. He wasn't just a cat. For your chance to understand what I'm about to say was mighty slim. But as much as that cat belonged to me, I belonged to him. You're right, neighbor. I stand corrected, flat. Hipshot was your friend. No, he wasn't just a cat. Three little words, "I love you," are the dearest words I know. Used often, they'll sparkle, gleam, and glow. Neglected, they'll tarnish and fade away. Three little words, "I love you," let's use them every day. Thanks, please. What wonderful words are these? No, they won't settle a debt. No, they won't pay the rent. But believe you me, They're words well spent. Thanks, please, little words, just two, but they mean a lot to me, and I know they do to you. Rest. Rest, and you will find good thoughts meandering down the pleasant trails of your memories to the peaceful valleys of your mind. You won't worry what makes you tick. That only the good Lord knows. You'll just keep in step with nature and take time to smell the rose. Someone greater than you or I. A pesty bee kept pestering around. He just kept on pestering till I slammed him to the ground. And as I'm a heavy man, when I put my heel upon him, he was ground deep beneath the sand. And then, to my surprise, he pushed the sand aside and surfaced right there before my eyes. Then I got down on my knees to take a closer look, and the repair job I saw that day was never written in a book. His gossamer wings were crushed and bent and broken, I thought, beyond repair. And what I did, I knew, really wasn't fair. With the broken legs and mouth and dope from the end that stings, he smoothed and doped and smoothed those crushed and broken wings. And then, after many trials and failures, he began to fly. He was aided by someone greater than you or I. Then, lifted by a breeze, I saw him fly away beyond the trees, and I, a contrite, humble man, remained there on my knees. Common horse sense. You say you had a few too many, young fellow. That's a statement frank and true. And as I'm much older, I have a word or two for you. Oh, you may not like my advice, but I'll guarantee that it's sound. I've been dry behind the ears for many, many years, and you're darn tootin' I've been around. And I have found that one drink is one too many. It's something I do not need. I couldn't dissipate, buck the odds, and still hope to succeed. And I have this to say. If I hadn't taken care of number one, I wouldn't be around today. And furthermore, I think never have I lost a friend just because I do not drink. Here we are, back to the same old question, whether to drink or no. Well, ask your horse. He's loaded with good common horse sense. He'll tell you the way to go.